Cubana coming back at you with another episode of the Unladylike Lounge podcast. And today I am joined by Dana Diaz. Dana, how are you today?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, especially with all of my followers and everybody it seems like everybody's kind of going through it a little bit and not quite sure the signs and all of that. But before I get into all that, why don't you go ahead, brag on yourself, and tell us a little bit about what makes you an expert in the topic we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. I am the unfortunate expert in narcissistic abuse, involuntarily so, as I'm sure we all are. But it was because I was raised by a narcissistic stepfather who abused me physically and verbally. And then I left there thinking there's no way anybody's ever going to treat me like that again. And lo and behold, I met what is called a covert narcissist. And I don't know if it was the familiarity of it or that I had basically been primed for being a codependent people pleaser, which is the perfect storm, to be with somebody who likes servitude and admiration, but spent 25 years with him, ended in domestic violence, which actually was worse after the divorce. And here I am 3 years later, making sure that I can save as many others from the pain that I have been through.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I am so sorry that you had to deal with any of those experiences, especially at the hands of people whose job it was to love and protect you.
Exactly.
I think that those who obviously will get into like what narcissistic abuse and stuff like that really truly means in just a moment. But I feel like a lot of people who are victims of that really, as you said, they don't necessarily see the signs, or they may have had experiences in their younger years that kind of prime them for being that codependent people pleaser. I can't speak for everyone, but I know I was the exact same way. So I appreciate you giving us that bit of information. Let's start off with the bare basics. What is a narcissist?
Absolutely. Narcissists are actually very complex, but I'll give a very simplistic version. This is somebody who needs to feel important and superior to others. So they seek to fulfill their ego by overpowering and dominating others, by gaslighting and manipulating people into situations where they have to give the narcissist the admiration and praise and the status and all the stuff that they need to fulfill that ego. And the abuse comes in. I'll just go into probably what is your next question, which is what is narcissistic abuse? It's when a narcissist abuses you. It's as simple as that. But what makes narcissistic abuse different is because it encompasses all forms of abuse. Whereas, like I could say in my childhood, even though it was still a narcissistic stepfather, I only experienced physical and verbal abuse. With my ex-husband, there was threat of physical abuse. He was very careful not to put the physical signs of it on me. But there's psychological abuse, legal abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse is a big one with narcissists. But, all these things, any tactic they can use. And some of these tactics don't fall under abuse, but should be because of the psychological effects, like the silent treatment, the gaslighting, making you question things and doubt your reality and doubt yourself. But they basically just want to reduce you. They want to take away any sense of self-esteem or self-worth you have. So they will insult you, demean you, diminish you. No achievements are allowed. You can't have anything more than they have. It's just so complex. And the problem for victims is that you get hit. Like I always said, it felt like I was dodging bullets. There was so much stuff coming at me that it wasn't like in my childhood, like, okay, there was an instance of physical abuse or verbal abuse. And like, okay, there was some time. There were maybe days or weeks between there where I could, come to some terms with it, process it. Narcissistic abuse is so nasty because this thing happens, this thing is said, this thing is implied. You're told that didn't happen. Then you discover something, the cheating or the bank account is emptied or, it's just so much. And in
Yes.
my situation, you throw a kid into it
Oh, my
and your
goodness.
family, and nobody can know what's going on because as a victim of any abuse, you are terrified. You know there will be consequences if you even give a hint of what you're going through to anybody, but they have probably already created a narrative outside of your knowledge with your family, with your community, your people at church even. They all think you're crazy because of stuff
Yes.
your narcissist has said, so they wanna take away any credibility because they know at some point you're gonna go to your mama, you're gonna go to your sister, your friend, your
Yes.
priest, whoever, and say, "This is what's happening," and they're gonna look at you and think, "She really is nuts," because there's no way this very nice, man or woman who dresses well and volunteers at the soup kitchen and it would do
Yes.
anything for anybody, would do the things he or she is saying. So it's a
Right.
nasty thing, this narcissistic abuse. But I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm sorry, I talk too
No,
much,
take your time.
but not all narcissists are abusive. I want to
Okay.
be clear on that. The way I always describe it is like brain tumors. Like you can have a benign tumor, it's there, but it's not bothering you, it's not causing you problems, it doesn't even necessarily have to be removed, it's just there. These are
Okay.
the people we know that have a little bit too much of a self-esteem, but if you look at their pictures on Facebook, I mean, really, like, how can you hate on that? Like, if I looked like that, I'd probably feel really good too,
Right.
you know? But then we have the other aspect, which are those malignant tumors. They do
Mhm.
cause you problems, they might even kill you, they have to be removed. Those are the narcissists we're talking about.
Excellent. I love how you put that, especially in when you said, you know, they'll do anything to destroy credibility within your community, your family, your friends, everything. Like I have goosebumps even just
Mhm.
talking about that because I feel like there's a sense of like charm and charisma to
Oh,
narcissists that people are like, as you said, oh my gosh, there's no way they would ever do that or be that way. And it's like, well, behind closed doors, it's Jekyll and Hyde, realistically.
yes.
And how hard is it? Because, with say physical abuse or even financial abuse, sexual abuse, things of that nature, it's easy, well, not necessarily easy. Don't come for me, everybody. It's I feel like it's almost easier to seek help as far as, treatment, therapy, legal action, etc. because there's um there's proof, there's evidence, there's physical marks, there's financial statements, there's,
Right.
signs of sexual abuse. How hard is it to find that kind of help and safety and protection when it comes to narcissistic abuse?
It's impossible. And I mean, I think that's why I'm so, impassioned. I have to create this awareness about it because there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, you're just sensitive or you just misinterpret it." The thing is, if you've been through it, you know it and you know what it feels like. And I would honestly, I look back at the physical abuse I endured as a child, and like, I'm not saying, I mean, I've heard stories that are much more severe and awful, and I'm not minimizing that, but
Right.
I could shake that off. My bruises healed. I have a few scars. I got
Mhm.
bumped up and beat up here and there, but I could heal. You eventually
Right.
feel better. The psychological stuff and having to deal with the fact that this person who says the words "I love you" and who actually can be good and make you laugh and have good times with you is also the person who is your worst nightmare and preventing you from basically anything. I mean, in my situation, most narcissists have rules, but
Mhm.
everything was dictated. Everything. To give people an idea, when I entered into my relationship with my ex, I mean, I was 19 years old. I was in
Okay.
college. I eventually got my degree in journalism, minored in psychology. I felt really strongly about helping victims of abuse somehow. Maybe I'd be the next Barbara Walters. I didn't know. But I lived in Chicago, prime opportunities, lots of internships, lots of entry-level opportunities. No. He moved me 90 miles away from all that to some podunk town. I was not allowed to use my degree. The Walmart wouldn't even hire me because they don't care about my degree. I
Oh
mean,
my
I
God.
was he got me a job working with his friend's wife cleaning houses. Now, here's the thing. I don't care what I do for income, but I had, when you go to school and you work hard and you have an
Yeah,
idea of what you want and who you are, and I wanted to travel and see the world, all these things, it's very unsettling to be just, I don't wanna say reducing yourself, but I think when you do anything that doesn't align with what you feel your wishes and your purposes in life, you feel unsettled. Was I
absolutely.
fine cleaning houses? Yeah, I did it really well. I figured if I'm gonna and you know what? I ended up taking over the business and I ended up building it to a six-figure little empire out here that, it
Cool.
was yeah, it was great, but it wasn't who I was. And when I
Right.
found like all this unhappiness in me, and this like I felt like every day I was just waking up and going through the motions, which were basically to appease him, but for what? So he could seem to do. He even quit his job at one point, and I'm thinking, okay, we're in this together, and all we're doing is Dana's going, working her butt off, and coming home. And for what? For what? I
Right.
guess for me, I wanted more in life, and
Right.
he just wanted somebody to serve him, basically. And
Mhm.
and it just wasn't who I was, but I think that's what gave him that sense of power because he took this very strong-willed, very feisty Puerto Rican girl and, real smart and resourceful and all this and reduced her to nothing. That must have felt
Yes.
really good for him. But, what really, really affected me was when towards the end of our 25 years together, I got really sick and I went to the family doctor. I got sent to all these specialists for a year. We had all these tests run. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And then in a 2-week period, I dropped like 15, 20 pounds. I was down to 93 pounds, which
Gosh.
looks great in a bikini, but no 45-year-old woman should be 93 pounds. It's not
Oh my
normal. But I
goodness.
was skeletal, and I mean, like, I literally could not even tear toilet paper off the roll. Like, I was like, "Okay, this is what is going on with me?" Because I ran 5 miles every day. I ate healthy. What is going on? What is
Yeah.
going on? Mayo Clinic finally figured it out. They ran a cortisol test on me. Cortisol is a stress hormone. My cortisol levels were high, they said, but they said, "We're gonna rerun the test because there's no way they're this high. We think we compromised the lab." So we did the test again. Results were the same. My cortisol levels were 4 times higher than what they should be at the highest, and this was at various points throughout the day, and it had been going on for so many years that they said my white blood cells actually thought it had, like, a cancer or a virus to eradicate, that it was killing themselves off, so all these, 2 dozen symptoms that were random and nobody could figure out, they were autoimmune reactions because my body was turning autoimmune, and you can hear sort of raspiness in my throat. That's because I developed a lung syndrome that's actually common among abuse victims, but it is like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at the same time. So, like, my whole
Oh
body
my
was in
gosh.
havoc, but the doctor was really stressed out because he's like, "Your body is shutting down, though. Your heart, your brain, your muscle, everything is at, like, base minimal survival rates." So he's like, "I can't give you a pill. I can't do a surgery. Whatever is causing you so much stress, you got it. You got it. Whatever it is, it's gotta get out of
Yes.
your life." So removing a person from my life.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, at that point, um, things with my mother and stepfather had come to a head as well. I couldn't be around them without like shaking and going into a straight up panic attack because, even though they couldn't lay their hands on me, the narcissistic abuse was persisting into adulthood with the gaslighting and again, telling other people these concocted, twisted things about me that would get back to me, and it's amazing what people will believe, but,
Yeah.
so in one fell swoop, I had to remove my mother, my stepfather, my husband from my life, and as I said earlier, that I endured the most domestic violence after the divorce because, of course, a narcissist can't just, withstand any offense to their ego, never mind that, their spouse would have the audacity to divorce them. So it was a really awful, awful time, but I survived, and that's the beautiful thing about it is that
Yeah.
I think once you realize that, all those years I thought that I had been bound to those circumstances when really I when it came down to it, I was laying down I slept on the couch because I wouldn't sleep in the bed with him, but one night before he did move out of the house, I just asked myself, "What do I want?" Because it isn't this. I'm living somebody else's life, which goes back to how they dictate everything. I mean,
Yes.
he dictated he didn't like that lipstick, so I couldn't wear it. He dictated I didn't even have a smartphone until after our divorce, which was in 2020, because he didn't like me on computers. He didn't want me to be on the internet. He didn't like me reading books because God forbid I was influenced. I couldn't have friends.
Of
I
course.
didn't even have relationships with my family anymore because they didn't like him, he said. So I couldn't, talk to them and just everything was dictated. Everything to the point where I basically had submitted to him just to keep the damn peace.
Yeah.
And it wasn't who I was, and it wasn't how I wanted to live, and I sure as hell wasn't going to suffer physically and let my health decline or die, God forbid, for a man. For what? I mean,
For
I'm
what?
sorry, for what? So
Exactly.
I'm standing here, like, literally telling everybody, like, "You have the power." I thought he had a collar and a leash on me. No, it was hypothetical. I put it on myself. I took it off, though. I took it off, and guess what? I went and I took my journal that I had been keeping a record of all the stuff he was telling me because, honestly, at one point, I thought I was delusional because I have him gaslighting me, my mother's gaslighting me. I started to wonder, like, because I try to be self-aware, and I'm like, "Am I that nuts that I am completely misinterpreting my entire reality?"
Yes.
So I kept this record and then I elaborated since I had some time during the shelter in COVID, I elaborated on those stories, and that's what ended up being published this past summer as my book, Gasping for Air. It just tells about the story of my life with him and so maybe people can understand it because you
Yes.
can't tell. It's insidious how it works its way in. It
Yep.
starts with, oh, don't go to church on Sunday, just cuddle with me, it's cold out anyway. Okay, well, what does it matter if I miss one Sunday?
Yeah.
To at the end, you effing whore, you're effing the 80-year-old priest, or maybe you're meeting a man there. And, it's just, but it's exhausting. And that's a minor example, but it's exhausting. That doesn't account for the guns and the knives and the threats on the life. And it literally turns into like that show Survivor. Like, if
Yes.
somebody leaves, or who can leave, it's like, who's going to survive this? Who's going to be left the last one standing? And you don't
Yes.
know. And it never ends. Even when the relationship ends, whether it's a marriage or, just a non-marital situation, it's never over. They will
No.
never let you go. Even when they have moved on with somebody else, they're always there. They're watching. They're making sure to try to keep their hooks into you. They are always there. I call mine a cockroach because I
Yes.
just cannot kill him.
Yes. I love that you brought up that point because I feel like, and again, I can't speak to anybody else's experiences. I am actually in legal proceedings right now with my narcissistic
Oh,
abuser. And it's scary when you come to that realization that you can't get rid of this person, that they're always going to be there. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you go to the law. It doesn't matter if you have a way to press charges. It doesn't matter how you escape or how they move on with their life. You are always going to be seen as belonging to them. And it's for that ego. It's for that sense of superiority. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that irks me a bit is how trendy some of these terms have become. It seems like anytime somebody, gets into a disagreement or gets into, anything that they're, have a differing of opinion with somebody, it's you're gaslighting me, you're a narcissist, you're codependent, and there's all these finger pointings. And I'm at the point where I'm like, do we really know what these terms mean and what they, like what they truly
Most people
mean?
don't, no,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't use them that loosely if they did. But you're absolutely right. And that's why I tell people, because believe me, I get a lot of heck from people. Oh, there's no such thing, because I wasn't walking around with like black eyes and looking like, the bride of Frankenstein. So,
Yes.
I wasn't perceived even in the courts. I had to go to court 3 times to get a very flimsy order of protection that he, went against within hours after. But, the problem is that if people can't see it, they don't believe it. And, I feel like there's a lot of references to religion, and I'm sorry, but it's kind of like how there's so many atheists and people who aren't faithful because they can't physically see God, so therefore he doesn't exist. They just can't accept it. And it's the same way
Right.
with abuse. But here's what I tell people. This is my answer to all that. And I won't say the actual words, but an a-hole's an a-hole. Abuse is abuse. So I
Yeah.
don't care what you call it. When
Mhm.
somebody has done you wrong to cause you intentional harm in
Mhm.
any way, I don't care what label you stick on it. It's abuse. It's
Yeah,
wrong. It needs to be over. The end.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
if anyone wants to counter me on that, come at me, because it doesn't matter. It's kind of like I always tell people, like the gene for ADHD and depression and various other diagnoses, it's all exactly the same gene. It's how the symptoms present. So you can go to
Absolutely.
the doctor even with sniffles and a sore throat. It could be the flu, it could be strep throat, it could be pneumonia,
Right.
who cares what you call it? You're sick. You feel like crap,
Exactly.
right? So that's kind of my answer to people that aren't sure. But yes, the when I hear the words all the time, I hear he's a narcissist. Don't gaslight me. I'm like, oh, you have no idea. You have no
No,
idea
right.
until you're in it.
Until you are in it. Absolutely. And what are some tips that you might have for somebody who thinks that they are or even knows that they are in a narcissistic abusive relationship or situation? Because it's not necessarily a significant other, as you said, it could be a parent,
Right.
a parent, a friend, whatever. What tips can you give them for an exit strategy? Because I again, just from my personal experience, it was very dangerous because there
Yes.
was the threats of violence, there was weapons, there was, all
Yes.
these different things. And it's just, I feel like a lot of people kind of feel stuck because of that
Yes.
that threat of danger.
Oh, absolutely. And then, children are a big factor. I honestly, I stayed 15 years. It took me 15 years to get out. Um, because once that child came into the picture, he was used as a pawn against me. And I was not walking out without my kid. Um,
Absolutely.
so it is very tricky. And that is why I actually always tell people, I think people expect me to say, get out, and give you all these ways you can get out. I stayed. I had to suck it up because it wasn't safe. Because I also had the threat of weapons, and we had some situations where the police had to be involved, and I even have emails, and my neighbor actually testified in court that my ex told them that he did plan to kill me. So you have to be safe. So my
Mhm.
number one tip is Don't do anything unless you know you're gonna be safe. Because I'm
Yes.
gonna tell you right now that even after a gun was shot multiple times outside my bedroom window on my property, a property that my name was the only name on the title and deed after the divorce, the police did not arrest him. They did not charge him. They did not even remove him from my property in the middle of the night. So you
Stop.
can't, yeah, I'm not kidding. I actually left, but at least they had the decency to escort me somewhere to make sure that he didn't follow me. They kept some of the cops with him and a few of the cops. There were 6 squad cars at my house, but they said they could not remove him. There was nothing to charge him with unless I had video evidence. So this is what I'm going to tell people. I was lucky because I didn't have a smartphone because he wouldn't let me. But even still, do not answer phone calls with this person. Obviously, you're communicating with them if you're still in a relationship, but I would even start with like text it. If he called me, I'd let it go. And then I'd text him and say, I'm just getting a bad signal. Saw you called. What's up? Just
Yes.
make sure your communication is in writing. Text
Yes.
messages, emails. My ex did both, but we're older. So your generation, the millennial generation probably would stick to text and whatever, but make sure, I don't care if it's on social media, whatever, just make sure it's in writing because
Yeah.
that's evidence. Don't get into a phone conversation with them. It
Absolutely.
doesn't matter what you would say anyway because it's not gonna affect them. They really don't care. They don't care.
Mhm.
The second thing is, aside obviously from the obvious thing that we said of making sure you're safe, just make sure you have something put away. Can you walk away from a situation without money or resources or anything? Yes, because I promise you every community, no matter where you are in this world, you
Mhm.
will have a place to be sheltered, you will have clothing, you will have food. You will be fine. I promise that.
Yes.
But it helps give us a little strength as the ones enduring it if you put a little away. I went to Walmart and got a $50 little, it's barely bigger than the size of of like an 8.5 by 11 paper, just a handheld little safe that's fireproof and waterproof. I think it cost $50. I put all of my documents in there, my birth certificate, social security, insurance policies, anything really important I put in there because I knew that if I had an opportunity and I need to grab and go, I needed something I could grab and go without having to worry about coming back because I don't care what you have and what you own or how hard you worked for it.
Mhm.
Do not go back for the couch or the TV or the clothes.
No.
Lord, you can replace all of that.
Mhm.
You cannot replace you though, or your kids. So just make sure you have that safe or have something with everything you need ready to go. I also started, I mean, I had 15 years though. It wasn't a 15-year plan. It just took me that long. But I was
Mhm.
also socking away like when grandma sends me, $50 for my birthday or Christmas.
Yeah.
I was socking that in the safe. So by the time we did go, like I had no worries. Like my kid and I were going to be fine. And fortunately, we got to stay in the house, so it worked out for us that way, but I think just, the other thing we have to think about is to remember that not everybody is going to want to leave that situation.
Yes.
We assume that any person in their right mind would not wanna be in that, but some of us do choose to either temporarily or permanently. My mother is one that you cannot convince her any which way to leave her husband. I can't say she's happy, but she has actually said to me, before we were estranged that she likes the life that he provides, I guess, although she works more than he does, so I don't know how he has convinced her that he's the one that provides it, but typical narcissist. But she honestly does not feel that she could provide for herself without him.
Mhm.
And so she stays and she's very submissive, and she talk about an enabler and a gaslighter. Things have happened, so many things have happened right in front of her, and she'll just look the other way with this weird smile like nothing happened at all. She doesn't wanna be out of the situation, so I just tell people on the outside looking in, if you think or even know somebody's in an abusive situation of any kind, narcissist or not, you're not gonna convince them to leave. They say
Right.
the average victim of even domestic violence, um, has to consult with 7 attorneys before they finally, proceed with any legal action. We are
Mhm.
not people who call the cops on our abusers. We're not trying to get hurt. We're not trying to provoke them,
Yeah.
and we're not trying to leave them because, again, that is the greatest offense you could do to anybody. So it's just a matter of I always, told my son when he was little, the first rule of life is be prepared. So
Mhm.
that kinda sums up what I would say to somebody in the situation that's even thinking about leaving, just be prepared. Get something together where even just a bag where you have, like, all the stuff that you feel you would need that you never would have to return for, so that if you have an opportunity to safely get out, grab and go.
Yes, just the essentials because anything, as you said, anything else materialistic can be replaced. Your life absolutely cannot.
Exactly.
Where can my audience find more of you, your work, and keep up with your journey?
Yeah, of course. I would tell everybody to go to my website, primarily danasdiaz.com. There is actually a quiz on there that you can take to determine if you're in an abusive relationship, specifically with a narcissist. Link to my book is there. And if you subscribe to the email, I do have 2 more books coming out next year. Because as you said, narcissists are everywhere. So this book,
Yes.
Gasping for Air, is about a romantic narcissistic relationship, but I have a prequel to that that discusses the narcissistic parent relationship, and the sequel, which talks about a friend of 16 years that you would think I could smell him coming, but boy, I didn't. So,
Oh,
and she has been one of the worst. So that one is about that situation. So definitely watch for updates, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
awesome. Awesome. Any last words for our audience members before we close today?
I think I just want people to understand that you matter, your opinions matter, your thoughts matter, your who you are at the core of you matters. Don't lose yourself. Don't lose yourself in anyone else, because I promise you there is somebody out there. If we're talking about romantic relationships, there is somebody out there that will love you exactly for who you are.
Yes.
Strengths, weaknesses, faults, whatever. They will love you exactly. You don't have to change for anybody. You don't have to follow anybody's rules. You don't have to be molded into anything. Just be you.
Yes, absolutely. Dana, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show today. I thank you so much. You have shed so much light on a topic that I feel affects so many more people than we
Yeah.
truly realize. So, it has been an absolute pleasure. And to my audience members, men, women, unladies alike, you already know I love y'all fiercely.